With each new episode of The White Lotus, I find myself getting more invested in what's going on with this group of generally unlikable characters. How's this clash of the classes, this group of entitled guests and the staff that's there to meet their every need? How will this all play out? Hey guys, Pete here. Today I'm going to be talking about the mystery of the dead body being loaded onto the plane in the opening scene of The White Lotus. There's just 2 episodes left in the limited series, and this feels like a good time to talk about how things might fall into place. A quick warning, I'm making this video after episode 4, which means there will be spoilers if you aren't caught up to that point. With that out of the way, let's jump in. The series opened with a flash forward of Shane alone at the airport, getting ready to board a flight to Honolulu. Deep in thought, he's kind of nervously playing with his wedding ring, and it looks like whatever he's thinking about has him seething. As 2 other travelers ask him about his trip, we learn that he was there for his honeymoon and stayed at the White Lotus. When they hear that name, they say they heard someone was killed there, and he confirms that, telling them the body is being loaded onto their flight. When they ask where his wife is, he gets tired of talking. In no uncertain terms, he tells them to leave him alone. He gets up, he walks to the window where we see the casket being loaded onto the plane. That's the setup. His vacation's over and he's upset. His new wife isn't joining him on this flight, and someone got killed at the resort where he was staying. At this point, the show wants you to think that it might have been his wife who died, but that seems less and less likely as things progress. In fact, I think his wife Rachel is one of the least likely of the possibilities, and at this point it feels a lot more like his escalating battle with Armond is going to be the reason she's not with him at the airport. And I guess I should make the point that it could literally be any of the guests at the resort. Someone getting killed isn't to say someone was murdered. I think there's a good chance it could be the result of an accident. The characters all have their flaws, but none of them seem like they would find killing to be an easy thing to do. Plus, they all have their own internal stuff going on and their own things to work out, which is really what the show's more focused on. It's not the kind of show that's built on this central mystery. It's really rooted in these complex characters, and their affluence and privilege provide fertile ground for social commentary and satire. I mentioned the characters being generally unlikable, and it's impressive when you think about how much care the writers took to keep the scales tipped in that direction. Any perceived redeeming quality is quickly overshadowed, and 2/3 of the way through the season, there are only a few characters left who haven't revealed an awful quality. They all suck, and it's novel because you're bound to rank their nastiness based on your own underlying prejudices and grievances. Also, in most of the ongoing conflicts, there's the whole, well, he's not wrong kind of thing going on. For example, Shane is thoroughly annoying, but on the other side, Armond did double book the honeymoon suite, and he's continued to lie to cover that up, and it's not doing any favors for anyone. While the casket mystery isn't the most important thing going on in the show, it's still fun to speculate about who might be in it. So let's look at the potential candidates. Except for Armond, the staff are fairly undeveloped. They're there to support what feels like more important developments in the plot with the main cast. And considering they're locals, it doesn't seem like their bodies would be flown anywhere if they were killed. I'll talk more about Belinda in a minute, but up to this point, she's been one of the characters who doesn't appear to have a dark side. I don't think killing Kai or Dylan would be that impactful right now, and overall, don't expect it to be one of them. Kitty also seems pretty unlikely. Sure, she's annoying and she winds Rachel up. You might be able to imagine a scenario where things got out of hand and something happened between those two. But Shane looked angry. He didn't look like someone who was mourning the loss of a loved one. If it were Rachel, you would expect that he'd be devastated. They just got married. And from what we've seen, he'd probably be even more broken up if it was his mother. They seem to be very close, and he seems to take a lot of his cues from her. And yeah, if you go back and rewatch the scene, he just doesn't look like he's had that kind of loss. What's more likely is that he didn't come out on top in the battle over the room, or he did, and it was a Pyrrhic victory, and in the process of getting what he wanted in relation to Armond, he took things too far, he pissed off his new bride, and now he's traveling home alone. I also don't think there's a lot pointing towards Mark or Nicole. Nicole has the control thing going on, and she's great at injecting chaos into her interactions with just about everyone. She takes a direct path to guide a conversation and never fails to deliver whatever it is that she wants to say. Because of that, I'd be pretty shocked if she didn't survive. In contrast, Mark has been all over the place from the time they arrived. First, he was sure he had cancer, then he found out about his dad having sex with men, and that information put him on a bender. Since then, Armond has been laying it on pretty heavy and been pretty forward in their interactions, but things would have to go all kinds of wrong for that to turn into him going home in a coffin. Something happening to one of their kids seems a little more plausible. Olivia is the kind of character who somewhat performatively has a lot to say about society and the shortcomings of her parents. She imagines herself to be different than her family, but there are plenty of hints coming through her relationship with Paula that this might not be the case. It's not unthinkable that she could get involved in a situation that might put her or someone nearby her in jeopardy. That could make for a dramatic situation. For Quinn, his age separates him from being a fully formed, unlikable character. He's a spoiled kid obsessed with his electronics, but he's a kid just the same. And after his gadgets all get washed away into the ocean, we see that he's starting to open up to the world around him. If we're thinking about the death being an accident, his diving lessons and interest in the local boaters would put him at a higher risk compared to the rest of his family. There's always an impact when a young person dies, and with Quinn appearing to be on a trajectory of growth, it would certainly make for a memorable ending. The one new character is Greg. Tanya mistook him for a Black Lives Matter advocate. His relative late entry into the story makes it unclear if his death would have much of an impact on anyone but her. There's always a chance that it will turn out that that's exactly why he's the one that gets killed, but I think it's too early to say. The last three characters are all outsiders in a way, and that makes them seem like the most likely to die. Paula's the friend that Olivia was allowed to bring with her, and we've seen that she has the idea that they're friends only so far as Olivia knows that she has more of everything. Because of that, Paula's tried to keep her vacation fling with Kai a secret. There appears to be some history with Olivia hooking up with someone she was into in the past, and now we've seen that she's still being shady. There's a lot of potential for their friendship not to make it out of the vacation intact, and as I said, her outsider status makes you wonder how safe she is. Armond is a character that's actively spiraling, and at this point, he doesn't seem capable of standing down in his conflict with Shane. Through his actions, he seems like the most likely candidate to end up dead, whether it be from an OD in his relapse or creating a situation that would lead to a fatal accident. It's not immediately clear why they would need to fly his body out if he died. I mean, he's Australian, and of course, they could be shipping him back home to his family. But at the same time, he's the embodiment of the staff at the resort. This character has things down to a science. This is clear from his tropical kabuki explanation to the trainee, and that centers his story around how things turn out in his war with Shane. Could it end in death? Well, we know Shane won't die. He was the one that was in the flash forward. So Armond is the only possibility out of those two. Of course, their ongoing battle could just lead to collateral damage, and I think there's a real possibility of that happening. That brings us to the last character, and the one I'm currently leaning towards. Tanya McQuad. It's one syllable, well, two syllables, but the second part is one syllable, wad. She stands out because she's the only person traveling alone, and she's managed to put off almost all of the other guests just by being herself. I mean, she's carrying around her mother's ashes, and she hasn't been able to let go of them. And beyond just looking for attention from a man, which is obvious in her interactions with Greg, she appears to be completely rudderless. She's rich, that affords her a comfortable existence, but she's an absolute mess. With Belinda, she's found someone on the staff that she imagines can solve her problems. In her mind, she's able to connect in a way that she's not able to with the other guests, the people from her class. But she isn't able to identify the power differential in how her offer of financing a new business affects things beyond it just being something that she wants to do. She sees this as a win-win situation, and for us, we can see where Belinda is coming from and being reluctant to find hope in it really happening. That's what makes me think Tanya is the one who will die. She came alone and hasn't made any strong connections with the Mossbachers or the Pattons. And those people, through the lens of the story being a reflection of the society we live in, they exist in the group that are pretty much always going to be okay. Through their comments, we get the idea that Mark and Nicole fear a loss of status, and they worry about their son's prospects in light of the culture war. But the reality is that they're the ones who have the least to worry about in the big picture. On the other hand, Belinda has something to lose. If things start to materialize with her getting her own business, and then Tanya were to die, she would take that opportunity with her. And for now, that's what I'm guessing will happen at the end of the series. Things might take a turn in the last 2 episodes, though. I think at its core, we have a story about a group of well-off people who see themselves as having problems. They do have their own problems, and so they run off to Hawaii to buy themselves some relief. The best resort, the best scenery, and most importantly, the best service that money can buy. The problem there is the old saying that wherever you go, you take yourself with you. And in the scenario of the show, they're coming together and their intersections are spreading those problems around. I think it should be fun to see how it all resolves, and I think that's a good place to leave things. In the comments, let me know who you think's in the casket and how you hope to see the White Lotus end. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.